and that's his friend Marco. And on Saturday morning, I was pike fishing in the St. Lawrence River system between gigs. I had about 6 hours between when I came back from Boston and when I flew to Sweden. And so I filled that time catching pike, and I just wanted to share that picture with you. I want to thank Let's Test. I think this is an awesome and cool conference. And it's been, for me, an amazing learning experience so far. I've been involved, I guess, indirectly with the Let's Test community since some of the concepts were discussed at the CAST conference. I believe it was in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. And some of the ideas there were really applied with energy and vigor. And this is an amazing event, and I want to thank everybody. This is an awesome conference. Well done, guys. I think that the cool bit about it is to avoid politics and all this crap. Excuse the language here. I said crap, sorry. The organizers never met together, and I thought that's a brilliant idea. After you organize a few things, you start realizing the key to success is not actually working together. Also, yesterday I did a day-long just-in-time testing tutorial with the 30 of the people in this conference. Are they all here? Can some of you survive that experience? And thank you. That was awesome. I learned so much yesterday. It was phenomenal. And the energy in that group was scary. And they kept me going all day long. Very politely, though. And I want to specifically thank Sandra Kimilovic. Is she here, Sandra? Sandra, stand up there. Sandra asked the most awesome question at my conference. And she asked it at exactly the right time. And the way this happened was a representation of what this whole conference and what this whole community is all about. And she asked the question was why? And it was exactly right. And it's the second person in the history of this exercise to do that. The first was Don Mills in England. And I've been doing this Lucy exercise, if anyone is familiar with it, for many years in many forms. And so it was just awesome to have a community of people that actually, they start with the question, which I leave at the end as the lesson of the exercise. So that was an awesome experience. I want to thank you about that. And also I had a chance in preparing for this conference to collaborate with Henrik Anderson and Henrik here?
He's at the back.
Henrik and Rebecca Sanders in Montreal. And we actually, this month, got the cover of SDP magazine on an article about the subjective nature of objective testing. So that was a cool thing too. So all part of this conference. My wife Anne, unfortunately, ate a bagel.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a Montreal-style bagel. If you ever had one, they're delicious. But she put cream cheese on it and received a little bit of food poisoning, which she wasn't well enough to travel. She's really much better. I've been Skyping with her. But our planned keynote about medical triage, lessons learned from labor and delivery, is something that I really can only do with Anne, because Anne tells first-person stories about delivering babies. And although I'm very interested in the process, my focus has primarily been the earliest phases. And I understand that no matter how well Paul introduces me, that talking about that for 90 minutes might not be the best use of your time. So I chose instead a talk about the subject of triage, but from a very different perspective. And I appreciate the perspective of this talk to be something that I want to watch me do the talk. So this talk is called the Elevator Parable, and it's something that I've been doing since the 90s in various forms. It's based on a true story that happened to me in Montreal. So the events that I'm going to describe to you really happened. And I'm going to tell it in a style that's called a parable. And a parable style is a way to learn about things, in a way to learn about things with a storytelling approach which has some powerful lessons in it. All the people who are involved in this story are real people. And I've got some people who have helped me put the story together the way I present it. So I'm going to rely on my silly technology to play some clips as I go along. So I'm going to have to flip applications. I hope you're patient with me. Right? Patient? Are you patient with me? We're doing a slow-paced talk, not that high-energy Rob stuff, but slow. Paul keeps walking on the stage. It distracts me. Okay. So before we get in there, I just want to make sure people are in sync that for the purpose of this parable, I want to just suggest a couple of definitions. Just for the purpose of this parable, not for your life. I'm not trying to impose this on you. And I'm not trying to get too excited. I'm just trying to balance it, just tone it down a little bit. Right? Just calm. So the purpose of testing, what many people say, the purpose of testing is to find bugs before our customers do. Although that's a fun game to let the customer find the bugs. I think that's a cool thing. Broader definition, maybe to learn. Maybe the purpose of testing is to learn. And maybe the role of testing is to provide objective input. And I now put the word subjective after that, after learning from Henrik about the subjective nature of testing, to facilitate business decisions. So for the purpose of this workshop or this talk, that's the definition I'm going to be assuming. Now you can come and say all sorts of context things to me and say, what an agile project, this or that, and I'll tell you yes, but this story really happened. And we were doing an iterative incremental development approach, which is modeled after Boehm's spiral model, and we were doing real shippable releases every 3 months. So this is the model that we were using. It wasn't what people today call Scrum, but it was reasonably agile, very effective. Also, I think that there's a communication element that I want to emphasize in this talk, which is that there's a role of keeping stakeholders aware of issues. It's like, don't keep it secret, don't keep it private, don't hide it, just you have to keep people aware of it. And not just keep them aware of it. I want to suggest that we want to meaningfully keep people aware of things in such a way that they can act on the information. If we just go tell someone, here's a bunch of technical detail and metrics, and so what? Who cares? It's got to be in a language, in a way that people can act on it. So that's a little bit about the purpose of testing for the purpose of this talk. Also, just to prepare you, I think we should take a look at what is a bug. And I've spent far too much time in my career arguing about what is a bug and what is not a bug. And so that's why I wrote a book called I'm a Bug. And I consider, for the purpose of this talk, a bug to be any concern you have about the project. That's the definition I'm assuming. And that's going to be very important because I'm going to ask you guys to help me. I want every single person in this room to help me with this talk if Paul is able to help facilitate this. So, purpose of parables, teach, learn, maybe give you a style of instruction that will help people retain lessons. And therefore, I'm not going to overload this with too many concepts. Maybe a few concepts. And so maybe a subtle way to share experience. All right, now I'm going to start telling the story. I was telling you about telling the story, and now I'm going to tell the story. May I? Okay? Preamble crap. Let's talk about the story. I am from Montreal, Canada, which apparently is very similar to Sweden. Canada, Sweden, same thing? I don't know. It's an interesting country that I'm from. We have all sorts of different seasons, and where I live, we have the actual glory of all seasons in their full, the full ripeness. I have a real winter that's ridiculously cold, a real summer which is ridiculously warm and humid, and springs and falls that are wonderfully transitional between the seasons. So we have in Montreal, I think, weather. That's what we have, a lot of beautiful weather. Someone was telling me on the way here today that the weather tomorrow was going to be bad, and I sort of said, oh really? Is there going to be an ice storm or 3 meters of snow? And they said, no, it's going to be a little cloudy. And so I love that pessimism here. It's like, for me, if I wake up and it's a little cloudy, I think this is a great thing. It's not an ice storm. I don't have to shovel for 3 hours to get out of my house. So this story takes place when I was the director of software engineering at a medical software company called Perkinji. And Perkinji hired me to really run the whole software engineering department, set up the process, do all sorts of cool things. And we were developing software, and they still do today, used by clinicians, that's medical professionals, at the point of care to do diagnostic medicine. So it's medical software used by clinicians at the point of care to do diagnostic medicine. Very much like the TV show House MD. Has anyone ever heard of or seen the TV show House MD? If you look at that, there's a beautiful tool that they use to do diagnostic medicine, what they call a differential diagnosis. They use a whiteboard. And what they do is they put the symptoms, the lab results, everything they observe on a whiteboard, and as they get more info, they put it on there, and they try to say which factors influence the diagnosis and narrow it down to the solution. Our software was effectively that whiteboard. It was an interesting context to work in, especially spending 3 years involved in organizing how to test software that if it didn't work, people could die. I think that the respect I had for software engineering, for testing, and for bugs gained a profoundness in that experience. So this is the story. This is the story of a day that I went to work there at Perkinji. Now, I lived in Montreal. I live on what's called the West Island. Montreal is a big island in the St. Lawrence River system. On one side of the island, we call it the West Island. It's sort of in the west, and the other side is the east end. It's in the east. You buy that, right? Okay, so when I sort of wake up in the morning, I had to commute all the way to work. Now, I took a road to commute, a highway, which in Canada is one of the most famous highways. It's called the Autoroute 40, the Metropolitan Expressway in Montreal. And what's famous about it is that it's continuously in a traffic jam. It's been in a continuous traffic jam since 1953, I believe. And this road is the slowest, disgusting travesty that people are always trying to rebuild and reconstruct, and it's a terrible thing. The story takes place in the winter. It was February when the story takes place. And I was commuting by car. There was no way I could use public transportation to go from my house to where I worked. So I had a car. The car was a Chevy Cavalier, and this particular Chevy Cavalier was a bit funky. So it was a funky Cavalier. It had a lot of problems. I would say that manufacturing defects and really interesting characters. It was persnickety. And I had to go to work. So it was cold. I had to go to work. It was cold. And if I'm not mistaken, I have the weather charts to show you and to prove to you how cold it was. This graphical representation of it from Environment Canada will show you that this story took place in February at the point in the curve where it was about, I would say the temperature was about minus 25, minus 30 Celsius all the time. So it's like the coldest day pretty much of the year that the story took place. It's a Monday morning. It's cold. And I wake up in the morning after hanging out with someone like Paul for a few hours, and it didn't feel too good. I was a little dehydrated. And so I basically took the car to go to work, and I had to drive this Cavalier. And the characteristics of the Cavalier was that the heater didn't work. So the car was really, really cold, and I, at that time, wore a wool suit to work. So I wore a wool suit. This wool suit, and if anyone has ever been to a city like Montreal, is a very, very delicate thing to wear in the winter because of a couple of things that happen. I don't know, if you look at the bottom of your pants after walking around for a couple of days, you'll see that the slush embeds into the wool. And then when that dries, crystallized salt comes out in the pants. Has anyone ever seen this phenomenon? This is something, and as a man, I really love this feeling when the salt is rubbing against my skin while I'm walking around in a cold winter with these pants, and it leads to something that we know as chafing, right? And we can talk about the medical symptoms around that, but it's an uncomfortable thing for a man to have chafing because of salt on his legs when it's a cold day in a Cavalier in Montreal, going from the West Island to the East End in one of the worst traffic jams in the history of the planet. And yet there I do that. And I'm going there, and it's getting really tense, and it's getting, I'm getting a little bit anxious. There's an anxiety in this. But I'm driving, I'm going from Roxborough to work, and I'm getting there. And so after a while, it's fighting the traffic and fighting the snowblowers and all this type of stuff. And I get into the office. And I parked the car. Now I did have, thanks to the perks of my job, they were giving me indoor parking. So I did have indoor parking, and it was going to start in May. That's a joke. It doesn't work in Sweden, okay. So February, May, it's always the same, okay. So the indoor parking was useless to me, of course, in May because it was beautiful weather. But so I parked outside, and I had a brown plastic Samsonite briefcase, and I'm walking from the car to the building. Now, with the chafed legs and the wool suit frozen on me, I'm walking like this sort of the funky sort of like, it wasn't a rap dance or something. It was really this tense thing. And I'm wearing a long wool coat that I actually bought in Scotland, and going there, and it's like freezing cold, and your legs are just dying, and you're red and painful, and you just through this traffic thing, and it's an outrageous experience. And then what happens in Montreal, of course, is you open the door, and suddenly a burst of heat explodes on you. And I started feeling the heat. So I wanted to be cold, and it was hot, and my body didn't know how to react to this. So I'm starting feeling this sort of Montreal type of anxiety. And as I'm walking around there, I sort of go down the hallway. So now I can take little longer steps, and I get to the elevator. Our building, Perkinji, in Anjou, Quebec, was, I think it was a 6-story building. My office was on the 4th floor. There were other people on different offices on different floors, and there were other companies in the same building. So there was a lot of stuff in the building. Now, I get up to the elevator, I push the button, and I'm waiting. And finally, the elevator comes. And it's crowded with people. And I basically said, oof, this is crowded people. I guess I got to squeeze in. And so I do this traditional Montreal style thing, what we will call is a pirouette. So you step into the elevator, and then you pirouette, right, to face the front. Have you ever done that, the pirouette in the elevator? So crowded elevator, pirouette. So there I was, my nose is almost jammed with the doors closing in this elevator. And I'm sort of there, and there's all these people. And they're all jamming and talking with each other about all sorts of different things. And I have no idea what's going on. I'm just hearing words. And there's sort of this thing I've got is that some words trigger concepts for me. And I'm hearing words. And if you think that I wasn't anxious and outrageously tense at this point in time, well, I heard 3 words that sent a terrifying shiver up my spine. And I was shocked. And these 3 words were CNC, profile, GPF. These are 3 words now. CNC, profile, GPF. I will give away my age with some of these things. CNC was the highest priority project in our business a few days from now with an imminent commercial release to a major customer in Alabama, EHS Systems. And this was a phenomenal thing. It wasn't just a new product and technology, it was also a new business model, a new way for the company to generate revenue. It was a component architecture where we were selling and licensing the component, clinical note writing component, the house's whiteboard technology, to clinics and hospitals all over the world. And we have, by the way, installations that are still in business in Belgium and in different places. So I was basically working on the CNC project. It was one of the most important projects there. In fact, it's one of the reasons why they brought me in, to set up the process to do this. So it was a component model. We're licensing it. It's a totally different business model. We have a major commercial release, lots of money at stake, coming any day now. So that's one thing I hear. And first of all, strangers in an elevator, I don't recognize who they are, and they're mentioning the name of my most important project. And who are these people? I have no idea who they are. And I can't turn around to see, right? You gotta understand this tension that I couldn't turn around to see. So that CNC was that. Then profile. What was profile? I don't know if you maybe are familiar with this notion called reality, but I was confronted with reality, and the harsh reality is that our customer, about a week earlier, had put in a high-pressure request for a last-minute feature called the profiler. Now, technically, I had no idea what this was. I knew that it was a feature, and I knew that we were compelled to deliver it. With so much money changing hands in such an important release, we couldn't exactly tell the customer, well, I'm sorry, we'll put that as the highest priority in the next sprint. You know, this was not what you could do. We had to do it. We had to deliver value. The value was our responsiveness, and this profiler was the feature that they needed, and so that was our priority. So we have the profiler as a last-minute feature request. Now, who are these strangers that I don't recognize and I don't know talking about the most important project that I've got, that's business critical in every perspective you can imagine, coupled with a feature request, a last minute feature request. But that's nothing. That alone should trigger some thinking. That's nothing, because that word GPF, and I feel dated and old here, but GPF is a term that we used to use called the general protection fault. Anyone familiar with the GPF? Am I the only one in the room who remembers Windows crashing? It's not that robust an environment, right? A GPF was what they used to call the blue screen, a blue screen crash. It is a crash usually of such consequence that you have to do a hardware reboot of the environment, and you lose your context. And in medical software, something like that is sort of a scary notion. And who are these strangers talking about it? I mean, I can understand maybe someone in sales or marketing jamming about the CNC. I can't understand anybody outside my department even knowing the name of the component, the profiler patch. And GPFs is something that, I don't know, testers and developers talk about. And this is going on in the elevator right behind me. So what do? Well, we hit the 4th floor. So by now the elevator's gone up. Now you understand how slow the stupid elevator is, because that's the real time I just did to tell that story. So I get there, and the elevator door opens, right? Shh, with this dramatic slowness that's really killing me. And it opens up. So I step out, and I'm not going to do the step forward, but I step out, and now I'm facing my back to the people. And I thought, okay, I got to see who these people are, right? And I turn around, and once again, my nose gets squished as the doors close. So it's almost like slapstick comedy, the way this is happening to me. Now it's the humor in it, of course, and the tensions have a lot to do with this sense of urgency. And I want to remind you of my definition of a bug. So I was powerfully concerned about what I'm going to call the elevator bug. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to give it a name. I love giving names to these bugs. I'm going to call it. And basically, the first notion that I'm concerned about is this something I should address soon, or should I address this later? So I come up with the concept of priority. And priority for me at that time was about how important the bug was. Was it urgent, or was it something that wasn't urgent? And if it was urgent, I would deal with it now. And if it wasn't urgent, I could deal with it later, or maybe even not deal with it. Now, as a group here, I'd like to, Paul, do you have my flipchart sheets here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like you to help me define a priority scheme. A 3-level scheme that we can use for the purpose of this parable this morning, right now. And maybe I want to tease it out of you without giving it to you. So what would be a good definition for the highest priority? P1. Resolve the concern. Work with me. It's very high priority. You want to do it? Immediately. Yes, we want to fix it now. Thank you. Fix it now. So the P1, let's say fix it now. What about P2? So P1 is fix it now, or resolve it now. P2 would be?
Do it tomorrow.
Fix it later? You read the slides? No? That's very good. And if I wanted to close the gap here and have the lowest priority, the P3 would be don't fix it. So that's a scheme. I think for the purposes of this parable, we'll use that scheme, and it just happens to be the exact one that I was anticipating. So I try to tease that out of you. But really, it's one of my dreams to get a priority scheme that's got that simplicity to it that everybody can understand. But so that's the one that I had. So right now, I'm very interested in getting people engaged in helping me decide the priority of the elevator bug. Why is this slide? Are you asking why this slide? What? They're making fun of him? Because the slide is more fun than him. Okay. So what I usually do at this time in the lecture is I distribute Crayola crayons to everyone in the room, and we start drawing pictures on cards so that everybody has a sort of a sign that they can raise to say priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. But today, and this is with the full support of Paul and his facilitation team. Are they here? Who are this facilitation team? We have a team of facilitators just for this talk. A team of 3 people. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use, for the highest priority, we're going to pick red. Red? Yeah, red. Red. Doesn't red sound urgent? Yeah. I'm looking for a metaphor that works here, right? Red. Priority 1. Be careful with him tonight. Yellow. Priority 2. And green, priority 3. Is that fair? Can we do that? Right? So with the information that you have right now, what I want to do is encourage you. Now you have to do this all at the same time without waiting for everybody else. Choose the card that you think best represents the priority of the elevator bug based on what you know now, because that's what I knew at that time. Paul will tell you when, and then they're going to count them. So go ahead, Paul. How do we do it?
I want everybody to vote. Everybody get one of your colored cards in your hand. Don't be on your phone. Get a colored card in your hand. Okay, is everyone ready? No. Hold on. People are getting their cards. Well done, Jason. Wait, what am I doing? I can't remember. Sorry.
I think I'm on yellow.
You're on yellow. Dan, what are you, green?
I love the sea of red. I love the sea of red. There's a lot of red, a few yellows, and not too many greens. But we'll have a precise metric, don't worry. The ISTQB is not going to get me on a boat. And is Chris here? Chris Blaine, is it? Chris? Not here? Okay, we'll talk about that later. So we have a tally? Yep. Okay, what's the score?
Yellow?
14.
He's hiding the metrics from you. He's faking them, yeah?
Yeah, I'm making them up.
Okay, we're making up the numbers. So what does it come to? I just want to know where I'm starting from here.
84-14-3.
84-14-3. Thank you. That's very, very consistent with what I was feeling then. And therefore I felt that I did have to take some action immediately. Now, you've got to remember that I just got out of an elevator. It was freezing cold. I'm wearing this wool jacket. I've got chafing in my legs. So I think the first thing to do is to take off my jacket. I thought that would be one of the most important things to do. And to maybe stretch my legs a little bit. I maybe thought of going to the bathroom too, but that was a debate that I had. So I basically went to my office. I took off the wool coat and I put it on a hook behind my door. And I sort of leave the door open all the time, but I thought I'd just close it for a few minutes while I contemplated what to do about this elevator bug. And I saw my phone, and my phone was flashing like a Christmas tree. There were lights going, flashing all over the place. And I just looked at that, and it occurred to me that maybe I should listen to my messages. And so I actually have the messages with me here, and I'd like to share them with you. And I want you to please be patient with the language and the accents of the different people in this.
Do you need me to translate Ross's?
I'd like Paul to help translate some of them, but so I'm gonna, and I have to, because of this silly thing, I have to flip to a VLC. Any VLC users here? Wow, that's exactly the same number of people that said it was high priority.
If you can count that fast, why didn't you count?
I make up all the metrics I need whenever I need them. Okay, so here we go. This is the first message that I listen to in my phone.
Hello, Rob. This is a message from Ross Collard. I'm the acting president for the CNC project and a very self-important person. I hope everything goes well for you at the Start conference. The reason for this message is to let you know that our major CNC customer in Alabama will not be needing delivery of CNC for another 3 months. Keep up the good work, Rob. Thank you. Bye.
End of message.
That was, if anyone isn't aware of him, Ross Collard. He's I would think, one of my most amazing mentors in this field and profession. A man who I love and respect dearly, and had the chance the last few years to do a lot of consulting with him. Ross was acting as the president of the CNC. The president was actually Ron Dalphin, and I do have an audio transcript for this presentation with the actual people. But for Star West 1 year, I got a lot of people to do guest talks in this talk. So Ross Collard is one of the people, and I'm going to use the same thing for other people as we go. And you're going to see a collaboration between people that are unlikely collaborators in this talk. But Ross was the president. Okay, so the president, the boss, tells me, Rob, this is important news. Our CNC customer timetable has changed. We can wait. We have a lot of time for delivery. So that's my first message. It's a very simple message from someone who was very important to me. That was my boss. And he pretty clearly said that I had about 3 months to deal with this thing.
Instead of 1 week.
Instead of a few days, that's right. Instead of a few days. So what I'd like to do then, based on that new little snippet of information, my notion immediately changed, by the way, of the priority of this bug. And I just want to know if you guys can help us by...
Get a card ready again. I'm just wondering, is power really like flaky here? Because there's candles everywhere. Is that just in case you lose power and the lights go out?
That's in memory of Michael Bolton. That's Chris's
All right,
day.
everyone have a card now? And hold them up. My job's way easier.
At Star, they counted faster.
That's because there's fewer people.
I've got like something like 46.
I don't believe that. 46 yellows? I don't think so.
Yellows.
Sea of yellow.
There was a sea of yellow.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
whole bunch
right,
of
okay.
yellows,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
Here you have 46.
Cool.
Oh, you saw
That'll
the
be
number
right, one.
46. That's
1, 2, 3.
Okay. This is much more dynamic sometimes. My Chris Glenn story is just to tease him a little bit. Chris came all the way from Portland to explain to Michael Bolton how to avoid getting shanghaied. And if you want to hear that, is that okay, Chris, if I say that? It's too late, I said it.
51, 52, 53,
Oh, Chris is finally here to help me out.
57, 58, 59.
That's okay, Duncan's doing an admirable job.
Hang on, don't distract me again. 61, 62, 63, 64, 65.
There's a hidden message here.
68.
It's a lot of yellow.
Yeah.
Make up a number.
71.
71! Excellent.
It all adds up. Okay, so that's cool. That's cool. So I think that your sense is very close to my sense at the time, is that the bug now, with just a little bit more information, has gone from the highest priority thing you can imagine to something that I have time to deal with. I'm not saying I'm going to procrastinate necessarily, but I want to deal with it now well. But my phone is still flashing like a Christmas tree. And there's lots and lots of messages on this phone, and I'd just like to listen to them and just hear what people have got to say to me, because if that first message says something, maybe there's other insights in there. So let's listen to the second message. This one again is an accent might be hard to listen to.
G'day Rob, this is Eric Peterson, acting CFO, working from the mobile office and doing a little bit of other stuff on the side as a lifeguard.
Folks, swing between the flags, please.
Anyway, I've been going through the books and I've found some large capex costs that were deferred a few years back. These are going to resurface on our financial statements in February. Now I have to offset these, so we need to capitalise the CNC development costs in early February. As you know, that means CNC must be shipped and selling. So we need to be assured your commercial release takes place as planned in early Feb. The board and shareholders won't tolerate any delays, mate. Say hello to all the folk at staff for me, and remember, 80-20 rules. Cheers, mate.
If you're not familiar with his awesome work in Australia, that's Eric Pedersen. Anyone familiar with Eric's work? No? So you haven't heard the wonderful, wonderful tester, teacher, and consultant from that part of the world. Now, Eric, if I can just find my slide, agreed to play the role of the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. And he was advocating the position of the shareholders. And this is a story that took place in Canada. And although it wasn't a publicly traded company, there's many shareholders and there's a lot of regulations there, especially how you capitalize development costs. Now, I think everyone in testing should be very aware of this context factor of how do you capitalize development costs. Some people think it's just, garbage discussions of the bookkeepers, but there's two ways a development expense can look on the books in a company. It can look like an asset or an expense. It can look like an asset or an expense. And because of accounting theory, an asset has to be something that you put in inventory, which means the rule to check if it's in inventory is you can sell it. Because you don't really have inventory in software, but you have software that you can sell or software that you can't sell. Until you're able to sell it, you can't account for it as being an asset. You can. When you flip it, it changes, right? But if you're trying to convince people that the value of your company is, $80 million, and you have $20 million in development costs sunk in this project and you can't ship it, well, on the book that looks like your asset value is $60 million. Now the amount we're talking about aggregate here was in the $10 million range in this project, and this was not something that the shareholders would take if we got a financial report out that said that we had lost that much money. Now, even though you can probably put provisions in it, and some people have told me at this point that there's a way to provision this really happened. So I have to tell you that the customer had told us that we had 3 months to ship this and don't worry and don't rush about it. But the CFO said you have to have something that can ship and have to have demonstration and proof that you did it. So all of a sudden, the CNC context sort of changed a bit. And I'd like Paul to do a quick tally of the count here. Go ahead. What is the priority now, given that information?
Guard ready and hold them up. Oh, great, my brother.
Secret message here, guys. Any?
Six.
That wasn't some weird at 16 because my thumb's in my palm.
28.
You are so making that up.
We're gaming the metrics here.
Yeah. I think I'm going to switch to lots, not so many.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. And so we swing, and we swing back. We swing back, and the community naturally does that. And you naturally do that. You're swinging back. This context information is changing your view. This is going meta here in what we're doing. Just listening to little voice messages. And of course, we've been talking only about one thing, which is priority. And it's hard for me to get a sense of priority unless I have a sense of severity. And that's only me, and severity is something that maybe some people don't care about in some project contexts, but for us at Perkinji at that time, there was a critical notion, and for us, we sort of thought severity had to do with how much damage a bug could cause. Severity, how much damage a bug can cause. Do people here use that notion on some projects? I don't know. Some people don't use it. Some people use consequence, or they put it priority and severity all together. I like to clearly separate them. And so severity for me is about how much damage a problem can cause. And I like to tease out of people, again, a definition, on, doesn't like this, a definition on severity. And there's a lot of models. I actually have a nice collection of models of severity definitions. But what I usually will do is I like to reuse the cards, if you don't mind. We can use the same colors again. Is that okay? Have you permission to do that? No? You want me to stop? We'll use the three colors we got, yeah. So green would be probably the lowest severity, red the highest severity, yellow somewhere in the middle. So if the highest severity is the first one, what would a good definition be for a high severity?
Kill someone. Yeah.
Kill someone would be good? Yeah, I guess so. That's a little all-encompassing. So let's a little simpler than that if we don't mind. What about it's a terrible catastrophic failure that we can't work around, something like that?
Is that simple?
Sorry, did you say catastrophic?
Catastrophic. I don't want to say kill someone, I have reasons for that, but I only have 3 levels, so I want to capture a bit broader than that. If I had 5 levels, I might have 1 level saying kill someone. Then something less than that would be what? A showstopper? Well, something, what I'm fishing for is something that we can work around, maybe. So a little less severe, we can work around it. And the lowest one, I'm fishing for cosmetic. So rather than doing the interaction and teasing Paul. So S1, unusable, no straightforward workaround. S2, workaround possible. S3, cosmetic. Now with our new counting metric, what I'd like to do is just get a feel for, a sense for, based on what we know, and at all times I have to have a sense for what the severity is. So what I'm interested in hearing from you guys is, what's the severity of the elevator problem counted really quickly? So we have a blend of reds. Yeah, so it's 83 reds and 21 yellows, exactly. There's a HP Mercury tool I'm using for this. Yeah. I just, okay. All right. I want to share though, because there's still messages on my thing, so I want to take a look at the next one. Listen very carefully. You might recognize this one.
Hey Rob, this is James Bach calling you back. I hope you're having fun there at Star West. Wish I was there, but as you know, I'm acting product manager on the CNC project. So here's the information you wanted. Yes, we have conducted user surveys and interviews. Yes, I can tell you what doctors think of catastrophic failure of the product? The answer is they don't like it. The doctors we polled said that GPFs, blue screens, and hangs are intolerable during a clinical encounter. It's possible that they like things to crash at other times. They didn't say that, but I noticed they use a lot of Microsoft products in their offices. This is Acting Product Manager James Bach signing off.
I don't have to say anything to introduce that gentleman. He's a wonderful teacher, James Bach. So given what, well, we're going to do a quick vote here, but given this information then, I know that doctors can't tolerate GPF, so I just want to affirm that with you. And so we can take a quick show of hands. How does that influence you? It shouldn't influence you too much usually, but show of hands just to see the reds and the yellows and the greens there. So we're all here. Is it exactly the same count? I think.
A lot less yellows.
Yes, yellows?
Seriously, there's 8 yellows total.
8 yellows, okay. So you got it? So that's an interesting thing. Now, I have, of course, getting into this issue right now. What did he do?
I put lots and 8.
Thank you. That's good. I like the precision. We're getting this right. So I do have, and it's maybe appropriate, the next speaker, based on our precision decisions, to listen to. So this is a message I got here.
Hi, Rob. Rex Black here, Acting Development Lead for the CNC project. I hope you have a chance to share your enthusiasm about my new book, Critical Testing Processes at Star West. I want to keep you updated on the CNC project. First of all, you should know that the new CNC Profiler is a tool being developed to help some system administrators deploy applications integrating CNC at medical centers. The CNC Profiler is a simple editor of some basic text INI files. Hope that helps. Take care. See you soon.
So that's Rex Black, and this is the first time you've ever heard Rex Black and James Bach give a joint presentation together. If anyone gets the subtlety of that, we'll talk at the bar afterwards. The message there was from the development lead. So this is development lead. Actually, development lead was Yvan Aymon at the time. And the message was very interesting. It's very important. This is very fundamental. So there was a last-minute feature request. But it made sense. It wasn't foolish. Because the people who were installing the software needed a tool to deploy it in networks at hospitals. And we had all the software for our object working, but we didn't have a network-oriented installer to make sure that everyone had the same configuration files. The type of configuration files we used was a very simple strategy with a text file. We call this an INI file, a text file, where we had configuration options in that file. And the thing is that this is something that was developed in-house, and it was used by, it was not used by doctors at all. Doctors would never ever see this, so to the point of people getting killed. Doctors would never see this software. And furthermore, if we had a crash in it operationally, well, you just open up Notepad and easily and gracefully work around the problem. And in fact, the people were highly technical, skilled network installers who just wanted to simplify their work because they would have to install several hundred seats. So given this information now that we know that the CNC profiler is just basically a text editor, how would you rank the severity of the elevator bug?
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
So.
2.
Lots.
Lots of yellow and about 16 green?
17. Yeah.
17, oh, it's way off. 17 and a third number.
All right. Well, it looks like I've got only one more message on my answering machine. And so I'll just bear with me. I know that this is now getting tiring to watch all this metric stuff going on, but...
Hi, Rob. This is Danny Faught, your acting developer for the CNC project. I hear you're out at Star West this week. I wish I could be there, but I hope you take the chance to let people know about Tejas Software Consulting and, of course, also Open Testware Reviews, where people can find out about free test tools. Who wouldn't like free stuff? Anyway, I've got some important news about the CNC Profiler. Last Friday, I had a couple of the sysadmins come over to take a look at an intermediate build that I did of the Profiler. We walked through the user interface and looked at some of the features and functionality. So I wanted to make sure that we met the real needs of the target end users, and the sysadmins seem to be some good folks to talk to about that. We had a couple of crashes when I was doing the demo, but overall I was really excited because the sysadmin guys loved it. So I just wanted to let you know that the CNC Profiler is a big hit, and I wanted to pass on the good news. So I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
So this is an interesting turn of events for me right now, because I didn't realize that our team had put our very best developer on what is the very simplest project. And that's because we wanted to mitigate risk. We didn't want to take any chances whatsoever. And even though the Profiler was a simple text editor, they put the best developer in the whole company on it, Pierre Bizagnon. And this developer demonstrated excellence in the practice of software engineering, in the craft of software engineering. And what he did was he basically went and he built a prototype in his development lab, not touching a real system, not with a real database in the background, not with the back end. And he wanted to walk through it with real users in the development unit testing environment, wanted to walk through it with real users to basically see how they interact with it and to see if it really solved the problem of the customers. So Pierre Bizagnon, the developer, went and he went up to the people on the, remember I said it's a 6-story building, and I didn't know the people in the upper floors. Well, we had outsourced our network administration support to a company called, I think it was CGI in Canada, and they had a whole staff of network people and sysadmins that I didn't know. I'd never seen them before in my life, didn't know who they were. And basically these were the guys in the elevator. And they were talking about the fact that a developer let them into the lab and they got to see all the cool stuff, and they were getting a kick out of the fact that it crashed while it was running. But they basically thought this was just a fantastic thing. And not only that, but they loved it, and they said, wow, if we had tools like this, it would make our life easier and better. And so the message I have is basically saying, everything is super, everything is well, the Profiler is in excellent shape, and we demonstrate excellence in our approach to software engineering. We get tons and tons of real relevant customer-facing testing over and above our normal practice by our best and most mature software developer. Now, with this in mind, I like to tease the end of this. This is almost the end of the parable. So what I want to do is I want to just have you guys to quickly assess the priority given what you know now. What is the priority of the elevator book?
So back to priority, not
priority.
Priority. Sorry, 2 reds. And pretty close to 50-50.
All right, and what about severity? You're not going to let him do severity, Paul? Okay. Severity.
And severity. 1 red, 2 red, 3, 4, 5. It's interesting, this time more yellow over here, but more green over here.
We're set?
Yep.
Okay. So, parables wouldn't be parables without a moral. Not necessarily a deep discussion, but a moral. And the moral is sort of very close to my heart, is that bugs are not good or bad. Bugs are not good or bad. But some bugs are important. And important bugs have a high priority. And when you look at a bug, you can tell it's important. How do you know that bug is important? Because it
has a briefcase.
No, not because it has a briefcase. No, that's not the right answer. What else does that bug have? A tie. So whenever you see a bug that's got a tie, you know that it's important and has a high priority. And some bugs are dangerous. And dangerous bugs have a high severity, right? And setting the priority and severity is indeed a business decision. And changing business conditions impact both the priority and the severity of a bug. And it's very important, if context drivers around the business or the technology change in your project, to really review previous decisions on bugs, to make sure people aware who are assigning priority and severity are aware of relevant business drivers. And the factors that I mentioned today, business factors I mentioned today, are all real things that really influenced the priority and to some extent the severity of the bugs. And of course, above all else, don't lose any sleep over rumors you hear in the elevators. This is of course the other thing. Trust your sources, trust your people, and set up channels to listen. And you realize everybody was leaving me all these messages. They were keeping me informed of some things that maybe only one of them would think was consequential, but in their entirety, they governed really what was priority and severity. And that we call context. I look at bugs and I say any one bug can be in one of 4 quadrants of priority and severity. So quadrant 1, urgent, severe, quadrant 4, not urgent, not severe, and everything in between. And we watched a bug, the same bug, move from quadrant to quadrant by just changing the context around it. Right? So that's what we were doing. And the same technical bug can be in different quadrants depending on the context. So we should monitor the drivers and focus on finding and fixing the quadrant 1 bugs. That was my message at the time. I believe also that we should ruthlessly triage. We should treat these decisions in the style of medical triage. And I want to just show you a teeny weeny little video clip. I don't want to take too much time because I want to get some questions in today.
You have lots of time for questions.
I don't know if I have any time for questions here. I don't trust my facilitator. I've lost confidence.
You have till 11 o'clock. My headache's gone.
That's for you, Paul. Paul's a helicopter pilot. This is from MASH. MASH was on TV for longer than the Korean War. In the opening credits of MASH, you see medical triage. Every time the helicopter comes in, there's wounded soldiers on the sides of the strapped on the sides. They land, medical staff. These are medical people who can make a difference. They take the soldiers, the wounded soldiers, they put them crosswise on a jeep, and then while they're moving them to the medical facility, they're trying to triage the problem. And we watched that every time we saw the TV show MASH in the opening credits. It is beautiful and terrible. It is dark comedy, but the comedy of MASH is the urgency of triage. And what they had was they had not enough medical resources, not enough people, and they had people who came in with all sorts of critical injuries, and they had to figure out who to treat, and they couldn't treat them all. They couldn't do everything. They couldn't figure everything out. They had to figure out really quickly what was the most important issue, what's the highest criticality issue. And so what they would do is they would balance a few things. In medical triages like this, and if Anne was here, she'd tell you at least 3 or 4 stories about these things, amazing things. But they basically take a look at the criticality of the injury and the skills and resources available to resolve it. And what they try to do is they try to bubble up the highest criticality that they can actually deal with. And for other issues, they try to figure out contingency ways to buy themselves time so that then they can get other resources. And there's actually a character in MASH called Radar. And if you know Radar in MASH, he's a resource getter. He would be, his whole is comedy maybe, but his whole role in the drama is to get resources and trick people into coming there. So they got surgeons who weren't supposed to be there. They got medical supplies and things that they didn't expect. So I think in your testing team, you should basically consider having a Radar O'Reilly. I advocate and usually triage 3 things. I will triage in the software and engineering environment. I will triage requirements. That's called prioritizing the backlog in agile context. I will prioritize bugs with triage, but I will also prioritize testing ideas, and that's a little bit of what JIT is all about, is being able to triage testing ideas. I think it's an important model. I recommend that you look into thinking of it that way. We also, though, if we're going to be triaging, we need to have a decision-making process figured out in advance, and I take inspiration.
Not everybody thanked me at once. Keynote should be at all around about 200 hours.
Now be careful, R2. You made a fair move. Screaming about it can't help you.
Yeah, it's not wise to upset a Wookiee.
But sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid.
That's because a droid don't pull people's arms out their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
I see your point, sir. I suggest a new strategy, R2. Let the Wookiee win.
Now, if we're, you wonder how that relates to my talk. It actually doesn't. No, it does, yes. What happens is, of course, in your project environment, you may well have a stakeholder who uses words like escalate whenever there's a decision to be made, right? And they try to come up with the decision by looking at their position in an org chart, as opposed to the context drivers that I'm teaching about. And in cases like that, I call those type of stakeholders, the ones who rely on that, I call them Wookiees. And I'm sure that every team here has a Wookiee in their company, and you just think about them. First of all, they're easy to recognize. They're very big, they're hairy, they grunt a lot, and it's true. Wookiees are big, hairy, they grunt a lot, and they pull your arms out if things don't go their way, right? So what strategy do you think I adopt to take care of Wookiees? What do? You let the Wookiee win. And if you want to look at Chewbacca, Chewbacca is actually a nice Wookiee sometimes, right? And he comes from a Wookiee planet with all these nice Wookiees everywhere. But when he's in the heat of the battle, he starts pulling arms out. So what I want to suggest is you need stakeholder buy-in before you start on your decision-making processes to decide about things. Don't just triage for fun. Figure out how you're going to do this and then get the stakeholders to buy into it. So that's before it gets to a crisis. So if you can get the Wookiee to buy into your process, I think then you'll get less of this escalation stuff. And the last bit, of course, is the commitment to the process, and that's my final clip here, if I can find it, to just end with this beautiful philosophy here. That's another tool from HP.
Field. We'll never get it out now.
So to know you. Always with you what cannot be done. Do you not think that I say?
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, better try.
No. Why not? Do. Or do not. There is no try.
So I think you've all seen the movie that's in. Right? That's Ferris Bueller Goes to Chicago? No? Sorry, was it James Bond or something like that? No, that's of course Star Wars. And the lesson there is don't be fluffy about these sort of decision-making processes. There's some few key points in whatever your life cycle is where you've got to decide what's the priority and what's the severity of things. And over and above getting buy-in from it, it's got to be simple, graceful, fit into your workflow, a natural thing to do, so you're not adding a burden to do this. It has to be a natural thing. Like the soldiers getting put on the Jeep as it was landing. You know, they were doing it gracefully, and they were doing really important stuff, but gracefully. And I really believe you should get this decided how you're going to do the workflow a priori, as early as you can. I say to people, when I smell a project on the horizon, I want to make sure I know how I'm going to be prioritizing my bugs, my requirements, and my tests. And on top of that, If any context factors change in the process,